Join us in the Bear Den, a real-life, real-love podcast celebrating the joys and challenges of parenting, family dynamics, and unconditional love.
My friends, welcome to another episode of the Bear Den podcast. This week is a very, very special episode with a very special friend of mine, Mr. Brandon Robbins. We are doing a beautiful tribute to his father, who sadly passed away a couple of weeks ago. So my friend Brandon, thank you for coming in, my friend. And
man, you already got tears starting to show up.
I know.
That's a
mate.
good thing, though. That's a good thing.
I'm sorry. So first off, obviously, my deepest condolences to you and the family for your dad. It happened, what, a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago now.
So what was
4 weeks ago.
What was the cause, my friend?
So
what's going on?
he battled Lewy body demencia for about 8 years. Had a diagnosis about 8 years ago.
Okay.
And it was about the last couple of years were pretty rough.
Yeah. So what does that look like? What was his day-to-day look like with that?
Well, you know, we first noticed probably about 9-10 years ago.
Okay.
He was just driving around. He would turn left when he needs to go right. And then you'd say, "Hey, Dad, we're going home." And he's like, "Yeah, that's weird." Turn back around. You know what I mean? Everything else was fine, but he just lost the sense of direction. Was the first thing we kind of noticed. And we didn't really notice at the time, but then it started happening over and over. We're like, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And a few more things like that, losing his keys a little bit more often. And I lose my keys every day. And so I hope that's not.
I was going to say, but it's stuff
indicator.
it's stuff that you'd look at and be like, there's no red flag
But then
there.
when the pattern keeps happening over and over is kind of when it happened,
Yeah.
And my mother's the one that kind of noticed, of course, because she's with him every day.
Yeah.
And then a few years later, he was diagnosed with Lewy bodies. It's just a kind of a gradual decline in mental capacity. Mm-hmm. And so they were living in St. George down in Hurricane. Had a beautiful place, a dream retirement place. Mm-hmm. Lived in a house on the 17th tee box of Sand Hollow Golf Resort.
Nice.
So it was super awesome to go down there and visit them. And
Yeah.
and that was what they worked hard for and wanted to retire and be there. But then my dad he'd go golfing with his buddies and kind of get turned around, couldn't find his golf balls, stuff like that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's nothing wrong with your dad. He's just a golfer.
He'd hit it, and then he'd be walking over towards it, and then forget to be walking in that direction type of thing.
Gotcha.
So no, not just the more typical.
It's not like he could, we
yeah.
couldn't find our golf balls, but he
Right.
just didn't know where he'd hit
He
it.
literally couldn't do it. Or he'd be driving the cart like he didn't know. It was a lot of sense of direction was the main stuff on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then a few years later, it kind of gradually declined to the point where my mom felt like she needed help, and I have a brother and a sister that live in Houston, and so she didn't want to deal with the snow up here in Lehigh, and so they went and bought a house in Houston about 10 minutes from either one of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So had the care, and she took care of him in the home for many years.
Yeah. Were you able to get down to Texas and see him before he passed? Or?
Yeah, for sure.
You
I try to
did.
go down every 2-3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Very
just spend
cool.
some time with him down there.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what was your relationship like with your dad growing up? Was it pretty cool?
Oh man, my dad is my buddy.
Was he really?
Yeah. And that's something. Gosh, I think a lot of times you hear people say, "Don't be friends with your kids."
Yeah.
Maybe not don't be friends, but it's like you're not your kids' friends.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with it.
Good for you.
My dad was my dad for sure. He would get mad at me when I needed it. He'd call me out when I needed to be called out. But at the same time, I knew I could go for him. I could go golfing with him. We'd go to a movie together. We could, I could go and talk to him and hang out with him just like one of my friends. And in high school, I was never embarrassed to have my friends chaperone at high school dance or show up at, like, if I was at a party with my buddies, my dad walked in, like, "Come on over, Craig." You know what I mean? Like, he was like, all my friends loved him. He just had that personality that just people were attracted to. It was
Good,
fun. He was a
dude.
buddy, as well as a father and example.
Well, you have that same energy.
I
You
tried.
have that same energy.
I appreciate it.
Because you and I first met in Moab. We shared a room in Moab. And we just boom like that. We just came. Hey, how's it going? I'm Brandon. I'm Matt. Boom, boom, boom. What do you do? Where do you live? You just vibe, right? And you have that same sort of energy when you're in a room with people. Like, you're engaged and you're funny, and you make people laugh, and you're always giving great content and great advice, and you're a very what I would call like a supportive friend, where if somebody's going through something or taking on a challenge, you're like, okay, I love that. What do you need from me? How can I help you? What do you want? How can I do that? Like, you're always like that, and you always have been. So I think that obviously that trend definitely trends down from your dad. You've seen that for decades, and it's just who you are as well. So
Yeah. Well, I
that's
love
a beautiful
that about him. So I
testament.
think
Yeah.
that's something I wanted to emulate.
Yeah.
And have with my kids too.
Yeah.
It's like I feel it's more important to I want my kids to be able to talk to me about anything. If they mess up, I want them to come to me like one of their bros.
Mm-hmm.
Because you look at like just the stages of life when they're little kids, like you control every aspect of their life, right?
Yeah.
And they become toddlers and they get a little bit more autonomy. They're just getting in more trouble, but you can still pick them up and remove them. You can physically take them away from situations.
Yeah.
As they get older and you get to be teenagers, and all of a sudden they're out doing their own thing. You can't just pick them up and take them. You have to like, have that relationship with them. So I think it kind of changes from just dictatorship and kind of telling them what to do, when to do, and how to do, to, hey, dude, this is what I think you should do. What do you think about it? How do you think? What do you think? You know what I mean? And that's one of my biggest questions I ask my kids all the time. Is like, oh, cool. Yeah, dude. What are you doing tonight? Well, how do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Is that going to be a good thing? Bring good thing, bad thing, that type of direction.
Yeah.
And it's like, I look at with a lot of the Watt guys, a lot of the buddies there, like we go to those Ludus retreats and stuff. We have those little mini masterminds,
Yeah.
and that's what that's all about.
Oh, the mini
It's like,
masterminds.
I'm not there to have a dad
Breakthrough.
lecture me about stuff. I'm there to have one of my friends say, hey, dude, you're messing up in this aspect of your life and maybe you don't see it. Here's what I see. What do you think about that? How do you think you can overcome it?
Yeah. I love
How much
that.
more powerful is that?
I love that. There's a great book that I read a couple of years ago for real estate. It's by a gentleman by the name of Chris Voss. It's called Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
He's an ex-FBI negotiator.
I've actually listened to some of the stuff.
Really good guy. And one of the great questions that he asks is, and I use this with our kids, is the how would you feel, or how would this look like in the future? And it can be anything, So you could turn around and you say, well, I get why you're doing this, but how would this look like in the future if you kept doing this? And they're like, it's like, and for instance, like, so my eldest daughter, she, I walked into her bathroom the other day and the bathroom was dirty, and I've got to get over things like letting rooms be dirty. That's my hang up. But anyways, her bathroom was a mess.
Yeah.
And I just said to her, I was like, hey, how would this work that when you go to college and you're sharing a bathroom with 2 or 3 other girls, how would this work if your portion of the bathroom is this dirty? What if all of the girls you shared a bathroom with were as dirty as this? How would you feel? She's like, oh, it'd be gross. I'm like, yeah, it kind of would, wouldn't it? She's like, yeah. And with it, that afternoon, bathroom's tidy. Because it just planted a seed, and she's like, oh, shit, you're right. If I don't keep my shit squared away and other people don't, then it becomes a bigger problem. So just a little thing like, how would this look like, or how would this work if? And it just gets them thinking about it versus don't do this, do this. Just let them think about it and let them mull on it.
Interesting observation about that too. You ask a question like that, and sometimes teenagers, they just, they're like, yeah, Dad's right, but I'm not going to let him think he's right. Yeah. She's like, oh, Dad, it'll be fine, whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. I'm good with that answer. At least they have it. And I've seen it time and time again, especially with my oldest, because every kid has different personality, right? I have 4 boys.
Yeah, you do.
All 4 of them are completely different, and it's rad. I love it. But my oldest, he has to come to his own decision on things. Yeah. So it's a little bit more effort on my part, where I have to okay, I can't just tell him what to do. I have to do the question-based parenting like you were doing there. Yeah. And he won't let me know that I'm right. Yeah. But then I'll see, I notice it. 2 weeks later, a month later,
the changes happen.
He's doing the same exact thing to his little brother. So guess who was listening, dude? You know what I mean? And that's in those moments, I don't say anything. I don't need to stoke my pride or ego and say, yeah, dude, I got you.
I see you. Yeah.
But I'm like, sweet. And that's, I make a little mental note of that. It's
you want him to teach
that
down.
Question worked. I'm going to try that on the other 3.
Well, you want him to teach down because you want your youngest to go up to his bigger brother.
100%.
And you want them to go up to the bigger brother
I want
and the
them
bigger
to be
brother.
buddies.
Yeah.
I want them to be bros.
Because there's going to be a point where we're not around anymore.
Yeah.
And we've said this to our daughters. Andrea says this a lot to the girls. She's like, guys, there will come a time when your dad and I are gone and all that you have left is each other.
I love it.
So you can fight now, you can bicker now, you can pull each other's hair now, but there will be a time when the only person you have in your world left is your sister.
Dude, that's powerful. And bringing this home with my dad, bringing it back to that, that's one of the things I was realizing the last few years of his life and stuff. And he was a pretty well-respected, well-liked guy. Like, we grew up in a town of about 18,000 people. And he was one of 2 insurance agencies in the town.
Oh, really?
This is before the internet days, right?
So everybody knew him.
Everybody knew this guy. He'd walk in the restaurant and say, hey, Craig, you normal table type of guy, right?
Oh, wow.
And he just had
Was
that
he in the
personality.
mafia? They start pulling tables out
There's
for him?
some rumors of the restaurant they went to. That's another story. I don't think my dad was involved, but there's some stories I could tell you another time there. But that makes my dad sound like he's in the mafia. He wasn't in the mafia, everybody.
Hold on a minute. So he was friends with everybody. He could walk into a restaurant and get a table anytime he wanted. And he was insurance and knew everybody? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we'll ignore that for now. All right, Matt, you just ruined the whole outlook of my. I'm going to hold on to what worked.
You hold on to what works for you, Brandon. Ignore the truth. so he was. He was kind of
saying. He had a lot of friends.
He was kind of a
right?
big deal. Yeah, everybody knew him.
He had the ability that he could walk in the room, like we were saying. He just lighten the hearts of others, that make other people feel better about themselves, right? And in the end, I think friendships and bros and all that is super important and essential in life. But I'm sitting here watching his last couple of years of life, and who are the people there for him all the time? People would check in. His friends would send messages or check in with my mom and stuff like that. But family, his kids, his wife and his kids, we were there the entire time. Yeah. And I think the greatest, I don't know, just testament to the quality of person that he was is how much love his kids have for him. We respected that man.
That's huge.
He wasn't perfect, right? Yeah. None of us are.
None of us are.
And I can go into a lot of things that, but I loved that. I loved his imperfections. I loved that he was able to, when he did mess up, my dad it was hard for him. And you could see it. He's like, hey, I messed up. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Let's move on. How can we move on? What a great lesson, though. And it made me respect him even more. But
doesn't it show you such a beautiful lesson that if you see the male role model in your life, your father, your everything, right? And same with my dad, and same with a lot of people with their dads. Like he's the alpha male, the role model, right? To see them being vulnerable and to accepting their wrong as a kid, when the guy who in our eyes can do no wrong and his word is gospel, to turn around and say, you know what, I was wrong.
Yeah, you're like,
wow, if Dad can say that he's wrong, then so can I. And that's a beautiful message to have when you see that your father, your mother, the people the apple of our eye are not perfect. It actually makes them more perfect because they're imperfect. The
more powerful lesson is that. So what are you doing to change? What are you doing to become better? That's what life's all about anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I love the fact that he was like that and,
I love it.
Could show you that he wasn't perfect. And it allows, like I said, you and your siblings to grow up with, hey, if Dad can say that being wrong is okay, then I can say that too. Yeah. It kind of gives you a more balanced. So what were some of the fun things that you and he did? Because you're an adventure freak.
So that's what's crazy is I didn't do any of that growing up.
Really?
All the stuff that I love doing now is after I moved out of home, when I came down to Utah and got into the outdoor stuff. Because that's what I love. I fell in love with all the adventure stuff, right?
Yeah.
Growing up is all sports.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad was a really good athlete. And so.
What was his passion? What did he play?
Baseball. He was a really good baseball player, really good basketball player, and tennis.
Very cool.
So I think, I played a lot of tennis, right?
Yeah.
That's where I lived from about probably 7th, 8th grade, every day. Every day it was on the tennis court.
Was he training you and playing with you and teaching you?
Yeah, he was training, playing, and everything. I did some pretty cool things in tennis, but the coolest moment ever was the day I beat my dad.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's my proudest accomplishment in my tennis career, was beating my father. And that happened about my sophomore year of high school.
What's the odds that his proudest moment was the day you beat him too?
Yeah, probably, right? Yeah. Like this year with my son, we went dirt biking last spring, and I couldn't keep up with him. And I was pissed and stoked at the same time.
Yeah. So he's probably on that tennis court watching you just smashing his ass, and he's probably pissed that he's losing, but so proud that he's getting his ass whooped by you too.
And I'm sure he'd say, it's like, 10 years ago I would have taken
10 years ago I would have taken your ass.
I don't care.
10 years ago I would have whooped your ass.
And maybe he would have, but I don't care.
Yeah, I don't care. Well, you know what, Dad? 10 years ago ain't today. And I beat you. Right?
A lot of special lessons from him on going through that, though, going through the tennis court.
Really?
It's kind of funny. That's one of the reasons why I like sports for my kids.
Yeah.
I don't care if they play college. I don't care if they go pro, if they ever make a dime doing it. It's the lessons learned on there, because I had a hot head, had a hard time controlling my temper. Actually got kicked off the high school team once for chucking my racket in a regional tournament.
I can see that with you, actually.
Thing, But it was cool because I was embarrassed about it, right?
Yeah.
But coming through that and listening to my dad, not getting mad at me for doing it, but walking me through and saying, hey, why? What happened there? What do you think? Are you proud of those actions? Is that what you want? And having him kind of walk me through those decisions and help me figure out what I wanted. That's a powerful lesson.
I think you're spot on. You are spot on. Actually, I know you're spot on. That sports are so important for kids. And again, like you, I don't give a shit if my kids ever become pro athletes. I don't care if they go to college for sports. But right now they're doing athletics or they're doing some sport. Lily's in volleyball, Anna's in gymnastics, just because that's who they are, right? And Lily has grown so many important lessons in life from sport, from just volleyball. In the 2 years she's been playing. She's never played before in her life. She started off at school and she's got two very close friends. They're twins. Their name's Taylor and Sydney. I call them Taylor and Swift. They're great friends, and they played volleyball a long time. So Lily got into it, but wasn't very good.
Right.
And so as they were progressing and kind of getting picked up onto the teams, Lily was just getting there and not getting picked. And Lily's head kind of went down, and she was like, I'm not as good as the twins, and they got picked for the A team, and I got picked for the B team, and blah, 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 and I don't think I should do this. And I just had this moment of like, I just said to her, I was like, babe, she loves Harry Potter, right? And I said, babe, you love Harry Potter? She said, yeah. I said, how do you feel that the twins are doing well and you're not? She's like, well, I'm just not very good at this, and the twins are better than me, and maybe I should just give it up, and blah, blah. We're never going to be on the same team. And I said, listen, boo. I said, imagine you're Ron Weasley right now. I said, you've been a wizard all your life. You've played Quidditch with your family since you were a kid. And then you meet this best friend who's a muggle, but actually he's a wizard. He's never played Quidditch. He gets on the team and becomes the youngest seeker in Hogwarts history and starts playing Quidditch, and you're pissed because you've been playing all your life and you didn't get selected. And she's like, yeah, that's kind of how I feel. I said, but how does Ron feel about Harry? She goes, well, he's super excited from every time. I said, uh-huh. Yeah. I said, and what does Ron keep doing? She goes, well, he keeps practicing. I said, and what happens in book 4? She goes, he gets on the team. I said, yeah, keep practicing, kiddo. Yeah. You're Ron. You'll soon be Harry. And she's like, okay. She went to summer camp. She went to extra tuitional training. She goes twice a week now, and she is rocking it. The instructors are picking her out and having her do drills to show other kids how good she's getting. Like she's But it was the mindset thing. You've never done this before. Why do you think you're good at this? You're not. You got to get good. And if you enjoy it, keep getting better. And if you don't, give it up. Yeah. But she's committed, and she's lost weight. She's got healthier. That's awesome. She is passionate about it. She's dug deeper with her friends because they connect over it. She's learned lessons about being not good enough, but continuing to get better. She's learned so many vital lessons by just playing volleyball. It's beautiful. The lesson, like the camaraderie, the individual play, because when you hit the ball, it's you hitting it, nobody else, but you also have a team to support you. She's learned so many key things through sport. So yeah, I agree with you. Like sport is such a great way to learn for kids to teach lessons. So that fact that your dad taught you, lessons through tennis. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Next time you could have picked a more manly sport, let's pick rugby or something my whole life, you heard that your whole life. Oh yeah, it was so funny. Yeah, but then you look at you now in the shape you're in compared to the rest of us. Like, maybe tennis wasn't such a bad thing.
I was bros with all the football players in high school, right? But they constantly made fun of tennis, and so we'd be hitting 10 balls in the middle of the practice. We'd be smacking over the fence in their practice to piss them off. It's just fun. It's just like a rivalry. But their year, they ended up losing every single game that year. They're the worst team in the state, and we took state. So it was just such a sweet revenge, dude.
All the tennis guys walking down with all the girls,
scrawny, nerdy tennis guys. And we're like, yeah, what's up, boys?
With the little tight white socks and white shorts. And
come on, it wasn't that bad. Okay, it probably was, but that's right.
Yeah, whatever. Pete Sampras, mid-90s, super tight white shorts and tight white shirts.
But no, that's like, so my wife was an athletic, she's an athlete as well. And so that's like sports is kind of our thing. But it's interesting with my kids, and I know we're here to talk about my dad, but this kind of coming into my kids now too. But my oldest is very athletic, doesn't really care about traditional sports. My second son eats sports, eats street, like he just loves it, right? He just absolutely loves it. Third born, couldn't give a rip.
Oh, really?
And my last one, he's only 6, but you can kind of see he's kind of going to be into it too. So it's kind of been kind of interesting for me and Stacy to figure out is like, look, this is how we were raised and what we, feel is important to bring values. But then I'm like, really, what do I want to take away from it? Is it the sport necessarily? Not necessarily sport, but the lessons I gained from sport. Yeah. So I don't care if they play basketball, get in a drama club, play music, become an artist, or if they just like to study a lot. Like whatever that thing is, I just want them to struggle, to have to work hard and to get those lessons out of it. So it's like, it's kind of interesting because sport is kind of built in there and there's a system already there. And so for these kids that don't love sports, it's like, how do you incorporate that with them? Yeah. You find something else, right? And there's communities in every aspect, but sometimes kids don't even want the community. And so it's like, they just need something that they have to work on and get better in and to have that confidence. And I truly believe, that's something I'm just trying to hang on to. And it's just my own little theory that if we can get some anchor of confidence in something that I don't even care if they're super passionate about it, but something they've had to work at and overcome themselves and become better and see improvement in, that confidence will be an anchor when they get made fun of by kids at high school for something they suck and they can, well, I'm good at this. Yeah. I've overcome this.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
And maybe that's one of the big lessons that I learned tennis and, you know, some of those things.
Yeah.
But I love that one.
Yeah.
That's,
No, I love that. I mean, you're absolutely right, pal.
get them confidence somehow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I think
And
that's
it's tough, 'cause I
and
see
then
it-
kids today too, with social media, the world we live in, you know, internet at the
Right,
touch of our
right.
fingertips, and the negativity that is out there in the world with regards to social media and body shaming and, you know, the highlight reels of social and not the truth and that kind of stuff. It is important for kids to gain confidence, because it's so easy to not have confidence in the world we live in. You know, we don't look like that person. We're not as wealthy as that person. We're not as skinny as that person. We don't have the clothes like that person.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not good enough because, you know, they're the same age as me and they came from the same city and state, but they've got this and I don't have that.
Yeah.
It's a huge confidence thing. I posted something the other day on social media about Christmas. I'm sorry if there's kids listening out there, but anyway, but they were talking about like the whole Santa thing and, you know, turning around and saying that it's difficult when kids get the most expensive gifts from Santa. You know, if they get like an iPad or an iPod or an Xbox and this, that, and the other, and then the family down the street, Santa brings to their kids, you know, a handmade kind of $10 toy or socks or whatever. Those kids, when they go to school, it's like, well, what did Santa bring you? Who, he bought me some socks. What did Santa bring you? Who, bought me an Xbox.
Yeah.
Why doesn't Santa love me enough to bring me an Xbox? And when I read that the other day, I was like, holy shit.
Well, I don't know who said the quote. I can't remember. But it's like the thief of joy is comparison. You know?
Yeah.
And it's true.
Yeah.
Like, so how do we avoid that comparison?
But just something as simple as that. What are we planting into the minds of kids through the most joyous time of the year?
Right.
You're actually implanting that you're not good enough. And it's not because they're not. It's, maybe mom and dad don't have the luxuries and the jobs and the income that a lot of other people do. And what they have given and what they have presented to their kids for Christmas is the best they could do. It's not that kid's fault.
Right.
And it's not the parents' fault who are better off and can afford iPads and Xboxes and TVs and stuff. What we should do as a society is turn around and say, hey, mom and dad had a great year. Mom and dad have been able to buy you an Xbox this Christmas. Santa, however, bought you Trivial Pursuit or Twister or Scrabble or something. You know what I mean?
interesting, yeah.
Make the gift, the expensive gift from you. You worked your ass off. Don't give the plaudits
that.
to somebody else.
Yeah.
You take
I
it.
like that.
And just make the candy or the board game or the very, you know, the lesser gift from Santa. And you take the plaudits for working your ass off. And then everybody lives in a, you know, kids aren't going to grow up saying, well, Santa, you know, I only said this a couple of years ago to Andrew. It's like, I'm pissed. I asked Santa for a bike when I was 8 and I never got one. And then we took our kids to go see Santa a couple of years ago. And, you know, the kids are on his lap and all this sort of stuff. And the Santa joke, he's like, hey, what about you, Dad? What are you looking for? I said, I'm still pissed
I'm
with
on
you.
my bike.
I want my
Where's that?"
goddamn bike from 1982. You know, and this guy's like,
Here's a picture. Go find it.
I want my
awesome.
I want my
Yeah.
BMX. Yeah, I want that bike.
Oh, my Dino Detour, dude. I remember that thing. That thing was sweet.
I was like, I waited for 16 years for that son of a thing, you jolly fat bastard.
That's pretty good, dude.
So that's those kind of things, like where mental health and worth and all that sort of stuff comes in. Like, it's the little thing. We
Okay,
gotta
so
get
how do you
better.
take that situation with that? Say that child didn't get the nice gift. Like, how can you turn that into an awesome life lesson, right? Because sometimes that's going to spark a fire in that child. Like, I'm not happy with this. What do I need to do to become better and to earn more, to educate myself, to put myself in a position to work hard? How do you keep those kids? How do you instill that fire into them to go and get more or to do better, perform more? Not that it's
Well, I think
about getting
I think the
materialistic
lesson,
things.
the
but
lesson
you
in
know
that
what I'm,
isn't
you know
the
where I'm
fire.
going with this, right?
Yeah. The lesson in that isn't the
Versus
fire.
letting that crush them and give up.
I think the lesson should just be grateful for receiving whatever we get.
Right.
There should be an expectation. I think we should teach our kids to grow up in a world of zero expectations of you're not going to be given anything.
Yeah. If
So
you
if-
get something great,
If
say
somebody
thank
gives you an
and be
Xbox,
happy.
say thank you and
If
be
not,
grateful.
say
If they
thank you
give
and
you
be
a
happy.
book, say
Yeah.
thankful and be grateful. If they give you $1, say thankful and be grateful.
And then go out and
Just go out and
go after what you want.
go
on
after
your
what
own.
you want.
Yeah.
Don't rely on other people to bring you,
Good lesson.
you know, and especially as kids. Kids are only expecting what we give them. We set the expectations for our kids. Our kids don't set the expectations. We do.
Yeah.
If we spoil the shit out of our kids, they expect to be spoiled. If we ride our kids really hard and they're on the breadline, they expect to be ridden hard. Their expectations are set by and managed by what we give them. So it's up to us to set them, not them. They don't come out of the womb going, well, I expect 23 Christmas presents. I know, fuck, they get what we give them.
Yeah.
So you just gotta set this expectation. And then there's also the thing of, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
You know, and Andrea and I have this conversation with our daughters all the time. They both know what our line of work is. The kids know that my job is based around, if daddy doesn't go to work, daddy doesn't get paid. They also know if mom goes to work from 8 to 5 and 8 to 8, you know, whatever, and she gets paid. They know the difference between our jobs. But so they also know that, hey, you know, if we've got something nice this month, mom and dad have worked their ass off. Like if mom and dad are taking us away on a vacation, mom and dad have worked their ass off.
Yeah.
We've seen the late hours and we've seen the missed games, and you know they know that.
Right.
But they also don't have any expectations of us. You know, a lot of the time, our daughters will turn and say, "Hey, can we go to the store? We want to go buy something." We're like, "What is it you want to buy?" "Well, we need some face scrub or blah blah blah, but whatever. Can you drop us off and we'll go get it?" I'm like, "Babe, add it to the grocery list. I'll buy it for you from the store." And she's like, "No. We'll get it." They want to get their own stuff because they want to contribute. And I'm like, "You're not there yet, babe. You're 13. Save your money. Go buy candy. Like, we'll get you deodorant." You know what I mean? Like, that's our responsibility. But they understand, like, there has to be a responsibility at some point. So,
super cool.
talk to me. I want to keep talking about your dad because this is super important. And this whole episode's about family, so it doesn't really matter. But what's some of the, you said he'd had this dementia for 10 years.
Yeah, 8 years-ish, yeah.
What was some of how did your kids react? How did your kids interact with him? Because we have a member of our family who has dementia.
Yeah.
And it is very difficult. You have the repeat conversations. And, you know, you have the same conversation 5 times.
Yeah. So luckily for my dad, he loves dad jokes, right? And I definitely inherited his enthusiasm for lame humor. But so a lot of his repeat things were repeat jokes. So it was awesome, right? And and so my kids, my oldest 2 knew him pretty well before the dementia. My youngest 2, it breaks my heart that my 6-year-old didn't know my dad. You know, he only saw him. And so my niece, my niece Jillian, she's about, I think I might get in trouble for this, but I think she's 11 or 12. She didn't have a super strong, because they lived in Texas when they lived here in Utah. And by the time they moved to Texas, my dad wasn't really my dad anymore, right? His body was there. You still see pieces of him and have some personality there, but the personality was fading. And so she didn't really, all of us were kind of like, oh, that's too bad they didn't get to know my dad. She actually was, of all the grandkids, she called my mom and said, this 12-year-old girl calls my mom and said, "Hey, I want to talk at Grandpa's funeral." And my mom was like, "Really? Why? You didn't really know him." You know, my mom didn't say this to her, but this is what my mom was saying. "You didn't really know Craig." And my sister actually said that to her daughter and said, "You didn't really know Grandpa that well. What makes you want to talk at the funeral?" You know, just as a investigative thing. And she goes, "What do you mean I didn't know Grandpa? We had him in a home because my mom needed help for the last about a year and a half." And she goes, "I would go there and we'd throw the ball to each other and he could still catch it. And he would tell me funny jokes and he would smile whenever I walked in the room." She's like, "I had a beautiful relationship with Grandpa."
That's amazing.
And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" You know what I mean? So it's like our perception is like, "Oh, too bad you didn't get to know him." But then she had this beautiful relationship.
She had the most amazing relationship with him.
You know? And so I don't know where I was going with that, but it was just a special, beautiful moment. Yeah. And she got up and she shared a little talk at the funeral about that, you know, about how she just loved Grandpa. You can't
be sad that your boys didn't know the dad that you know or the grandpa that you know. They had their grandpa in their way.
Well, and my goal is that they get to know my dad through me, through some of the things that I can bring, the lessons, the positive things that I learned from my dad.
Yeah,
they can learn from me, and I let them know. I was like, "Hey, my dad was like this, and this is where this comes from." You know?
Yeah. And
it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun in that way.
That's beautiful.
But as far as the dementia goes, I mean, it was, the last couple of years really. But my dad his body was here, he was not. You know.
Well, how was that for you? Because it's got to be tough.
And I mourned him.
He's your idol. He's your role model, and like you said, the body's there.
He's super charismatic guy, life of the party type of guy. The one that probably hurt, the first time it really hurt was when my son's baptism in the LDS church. We had my second born when he was baptized. My dad was a very, very good pianist. And he'd come and he'd play at all the grandkids things, you know, and he got on the piano and he couldn't make it through the song. And he was aware of it. And you could see the anger and the frustration on his face. He was embarrassed. And that was one of the hardest moments for me when I first realized, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
is when he couldn't make it through. And he made it through. He still did it, which I admire and respect. But he stopped. He had to take a minute. He lost his places. He made a lot of mistakes. And that wasn't my dad.
Yeah.
So to see that fade, that was probably some of the hardest things, to see these things he was admired for and these talents and skills that he had, to see those things disappear.
And it's
That was a challenging part.
It's terribly frustrating too, you know, for someone like that who again, it's muscle memory, right? You know, if you play an instrument, not that I do, but you know, if you play an instrument, it's muscle memory versus you know, remembering what notes. It's you just go with the flow, right? But if you've lost that kind of train of thought and whatnot, it can be very frustrating. We have Andrea's stepmom has dementia, and she's had it for a long time. And honestly, I've never really known her without it, but I've also seen over the 10 years it get progressively worse. And like I said, you know, we'll have the multiple conversations. She'll make a cup of tea and then she's forgot she's made it, and then she'll make another one and then gets frustrated because now she's got 3 cups of tea and gets embarrassed. And oftentimes the embarrassment turns to anger because that's the default emotion of I'm embarrassed, and now becomes angry.
Right.
And so, you know, we've seen that, and our girls have had to kind of run with it. I'm like, why is grandma telling me the same story for the 5th time? Well, because she's sick, you know, and now they're older, they get it. And so they lean into that, and the girls can see grandma making a 4th cup of tea, and they'll go over there and, hey, grandma, you know, your cup of tea's over here, blah, blah. You know, they start to
helping out. Yeah, and that was cool. I know some of the grandkids as well.
Yeah, they really start to help out. They kind of lean in. Our girls will go down, you know, during the week and go see her and sit with her for a little bit and keep her entertained. But it's a really horrible disease. And Andrea and I, several years ago, we wanted to kind of learn more about it because we didn't know anything about it. And actually, Andrea did a class, or she was doing a class, and somebody came in to speak about dementia.
Okay.
Which kind of blew her mind. She's like, "This is great. This is, you know."
let's hear it.
And the one thing that she came away from the class, which really helped me understand dementia, and which really helps, is the way they labeled it was dementia is basically set like a bookcase, a tall bookcase. And all your recent memories, the memories of yesterday and the day before, are on the very, very top shelf. And so because we have so many more recent memories, because things are happening, right, our top shelf gets heavy of all these thoughts, and it breaks. And then those thoughts now drop onto the shelf below, which are the thoughts from a year ago.
Yeah, okay.
But now that shelf can't support the weight, so it breaks. And now those thoughts drop to the shelf below, which are now 10 to 15 years ago. And as each shelf breaks, the books and the thoughts drop to the shelf below, which are now older thoughts. So our stepmom is a lot of the stories that she tells are now stories from her childhood.
Right.
She's like,
That's what she has.
because that's where her memory's at. She's like, I remember when my dad took me to so-and-so, and we used to go here as a kid, and I remember this place being built. And okay, we're talking now about the 60s and 70s, but she also can't remember making a cup of tea 10 minutes ago.
See, that same with my father. He could still sing every lyric to every 60s song out there, every 60s rock song. Like he knew it. Even you know, last time I saw him was about a week before he passed. I was down in Texas, and we would play Mamas and the Papas or something like that from the 60s, and you could see his mouth. He didn't have the power to speak anymore, but you could see his lips moving.
He knew it,
and and it was the most fascinating thing. And I truly believe we were pretty fortunate as far as the process of it. I've heard some really nightmarish stories with this type of dementia, and it was pretty smooth for my father overall. Really hard on my mom, and that honestly one of the most beautiful lessons from the dementia thing. My dad had a hard time with it at first, but then once it kind of left him and he didn't realize he was going through it anymore, now it wasn't so much worried about my dad, but it was worried about my mom as the caretaker. Yeah. And you see a lot of times that the caretaker, you know, they start going through their own personal things, the mental issues and things start showing up with that. But watching my mother care for my dad throughout this is probably one of the most beautiful lessons in my life.
What was the lesson?
I've never seen so much unconditional love and service from a person in my life. They were married 50 plus years, I think 53 years would have been this year. We were able to celebrate their 50th. We went down there with his dementia and stuff. Nice. But that was super fun. But just seeing her just like never give up, unwavering, always loving him. Every single night she would go in. She had this little routine and ritual that she'd do every single night where she'd kiss him on the forehead, kiss him on the nose, and you know, and it was just beautiful to see. She didn't ever get mad. She didn't ever get, and just the love between those two. Those two loved each other. You know, I saw that through my whole life, and one of the greatest lessons my parents, I think, ever gave me was I never saw my dad disrespect my mother. If we as kids, if we ever messed up, you know, and we knew he'd be accepting and supportive of us anytime with whatever we did wrong or, you know, incorrect. If we ever disrespected my mother, it was game over though. We knew we were done. Don't even come home.
Wow.
You know? And so it was like, I love that.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love that. He never disrespected her. You know, well, they weren't perfect. They had some issues and things, not my stories to tell, but watch them overcome those issues and become closer and closer and closer. I never saw my dad disrespect her. I always saw my dad loving her and respecting her. And yeah, it was just beautiful.
As it should be.
Just beautiful.
Yeah.
That's one of the other big lessons I think I learned from him.
That's amazing.
And,
how's your mom doing?
I know that my kids know that I love and respect my wife.
Yeah.
They will never see me disrespect my wife.
Yeah.
You know, and I want, that's a goal of mine. I want them to say, yeah, my dad freaking loved my mom.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I think that's beautiful. How's your mom doing?
She's doing well. Like it's funny. I called her on the way down. I was like, hey mom, I'm going into my buddy here and he has this podcast and we want to talk about dad. I was like, what do you think about that? You know, I just wanted to talk to her. I was like, how are you doing? She's like, Brandon, I'm doing surprisingly well. She's like, I'm kind of disappointed that I'm doing so well. You know, she's like, I want to be more sad. She's like, and those aren't the exact words she used, but she was like, I'm just so grateful for the life that we had together. Yeah. And when I think of my dad, or and I think of your dad, I just think happiness. He was a fun person to be around. And those happy memories and the fun is what gets me through because I had that. I had that. A lot of people didn't have that.
Do you think do you think the grief has hit yet, or does it think it's?
I think it
coming?
has. I really do. I mean, she was saying that she has moments where she feels sad, but she doesn't. She's not crying. Like it was tough. Like we've had shed a lot of tears the last few years, right? So I feel like the mourning and grieving has a lot of it has been done, and there's still more to happen. You know, and you see me getting a little teary eyed right now, but it's like it's kind of an interesting one because it is hard. It's like miss this guy who I looked up to my whole life, but at the same time, it's like I'm okay with it. I'm at peace.
Yeah,
I know that he's relieved of this sickness that he was dealing with, and he's back up in heaven. You know, I truly believe there's more beyond this life, but he's up there. I believe he's up there hanging out with his mom and dad that have already passed, his sisters that have already passed. And he's having this great reunion, you know, and I can find comfort and peace in that.
And he's back in his body. Joy. He's back in his mind. He's,
you know,
he's got all his faculties, and he's
and what's left is, you know, they say that it's kind of interesting. Like I said, my dad wasn't a perfect man. He had a temper sometimes. I can remember some things, but he'd always admit when he was wrong, and he'd always work to become better. You know, what is it? Shakespeare, you know, the good that men do is often turned with their bones. The evil that men do lives on after them. The good is often turned with their bones.
Yeah.
As I was thinking, as I was writing the talk for my dad's funeral, it was so easy to come up with all this good stuff. It's like, holy cow, what a legacy. And all I can say is like, how can I be selfish and miss my dad and break down and give up when I was given this gift of this man that taught me all these things? Like, I'm okay. I'm at peace. It's sad. I miss him, but I find so much gratitude in that sadness that it's okay.
So what can you do? What can you do for you and your boys to remember your dad, Craig, and what legacy can you create with your kids to honor him and remember him and down the road?
Man, I think I just want to treat people, have that same influence on people that my dad had on people, especially my own kids, of course. You know, that's number one. That's priority. But I want to be able to just, okay, for example, I posted that thing on social media and reading through the comments of people, like people I haven't talked to since, you know, my childhood, my high school, people I haven't talked to 20 plus years. And they're the common theme. It's not like your dad was fun to be around. Your dad made me feel better about myself. Your dad was there to support me. Your dad made me feel welcome at church, at school, at this, you know, your dad was a great coach. Your dad was a great scoutmaster. You know, it's like all these things coming through. That's what I hope that I can make. That's a legacy I hope I can have a positive influence on other people.
Did you share that with the boys?
100%. Yeah. They read through them with me.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's important because, you know, oftentimes we don't, your family is very fortunate that they've had the ability to have grandparents and you know, a grandfather and a grandmother. You know, I just raised with a nan. I missed 3 of my grandparents. I only had 1.
Yeah.
And I look back now, I'm like, man, I wish There are a million questions since she's gone that I wish I asked.
Oh, man.
And the hours that I've spent with her and, just in silence, reading or watching TV. And man, I wish I'd asked all these questions about the war and her marriage and raising kids during the wartime and being a widow at 40.
Yeah.
She literally lost her husband at like the age of, how old was, 50. She was 50 when she lost her husband. But like being a widow at 50 and going through that life, raising family and she was a housewife. My granddad took everything, so she was a housewife. She never paid the bills. She'd never done any of that shit. And so like when your husband dies and now all of a sudden she's got to pay the bills, pay the house and do this and do that, and she just ran with it. But I just wish we have this opportunity to sit down and like ask the questions. And now it's your job to answer the questions for your kids.
Yeah.
And make sure that your dad's memory and their grandfather's memory is passed on in the light that it deserves, which is the light of beauty and friendship and fun and all those sort of things. Because unfortunately, there's going to be a time 40, 50 years down the road that we're gone.
Yeah.
And
hopefully 40, 50 years down the road.
Hopefully 40 or 50 down the road, yeah. But Jimmy Rex said this a couple of weeks ago at the Ludus we were last at, and it kind of hit me. Actually, he didn't say it at Ludus. He said it at a sales event. And he turned around and said, we as a society get so hung up on who we are. And he's like, we all play small. He's like, think back 3 to 4 generations. Can you give me the name of your grandfather or grandparent? And I'm thinking back going, well, I could, but I probably not correctly.
Yeah.
And he's like, in 30 to 40, 50 years' time, in 4 to 5 generations, you will be forgotten. Nobody will remember you.
Yeah.
So how do we ensure that 3 generations remember each other? How do we ensure that your kids remember your dad and their kids remember you? And how do we keep that alive? It's through us.
Well, my thing there is, I've had that thought too, but it's like, do I care if they remember me? I don't really care if they remember me. I don't get too hung up on that. What I care about is that remember, do they incorporate and take on things that I taught them and teaching that to their kids? So if they forget my name, that's fine. But the lessons and the attributes and the talents and the skills and the how to overcome life and how to move on, that's what I want to be carried on.
That's very fair, actually.
You know
that's
what I'm
very
saying?
True. Yeah.
Maybe that's a little different way to.
Of
course, it would be great.
I think that's great.
I would love to have a huge statue be, like in the front yard of my generations to come. That'd be kind of fun.
Driving up to the Robbins Manor, and there's just like Gaston,
who cares? That thing would. Who cares?
I'm buying you a statue.
I should never say that out loud. As long as I can wrap it up and give it to my wife, or just make it a sexy statue.
It's going to be like the Rocky Balboa pose in Philadelphia, right in the middle of your damn driveway.
I'm thinking more George Costanza with the rose in the mouth. That kind of statue on the front of your house, like laying down. That might be money.
Done. You're gonna
what I'm saying.
You're gonna wake up one morning, just open your window, and just like, God damn it, Matt.
No, Matt.
What have you done?
I love you, dude. Please no. But that's how I hope my legacy can live on.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my name, but the lessons,
the things you did, and the lessons you taught. Yeah.
And that's how I feel with my 6-year-old that didn't really know my dad. He'll know his name, but he didn't really know him. But he knows my dad because I have a lot of same sense of humor that my dad had. My brothers, through my sister, through some of those things, I want that to be him. I want him to take those lessons from my dad.
I love that, man.
Through me, and then give that to his kids through him.
Yeah. Pass the lessons down. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the legacy. That's how we're remembered.
Yeah.
The type of people we make.
Yeah, I love that.
We make.
What was as we start to wrap up? What was the fondest memory of your dad?
Just laughing. I couldn't narrow it down just to one. Like honestly, it was fun. He was just fun to be around. We'd go on the golf course and just chat about life, and he'd tell some joke, perhaps an off-color one at times. And I love that about him.
But yeah, I'm just LDS
like,
too, right? So a little off-color joke is like, whoa, Dad, that's left field for you. Okay.
No, it was fun though. That's the type of guy he was. But no, here's one. For example, we're driving. My sister and I, we went to a Canadian Brass. My dad loved music. He's a very talented musician. We go to Canadian Brass. You probably never even heard of him. It's just a brass, like, what's 5? Not a quartet, but quintet?
Octo?
Something like that. Quintet.
Octo.
But basically, brass players. And they play beautiful music, dude. It's absolutely awesome. I love it. I still listen to it, every once in a while. But he wanted to take my sister and I, this was when I was probably about 16, my sister was probably like 13, 12, something like that, take us to a Canadian Brass concert in Salt Lake. So he, my mom, and my sister and I jump in the car. We're driving down the freeway. We're listening to this music, getting all happy, and you could just see him just like he's just bouncing in the driver's seat. He pulls over on the freeway, gets my mom out of the car, and starts dancing on the side of the road. If that tells you what kind of guy,
No shit.
He does not care. He was just like, I'm happy, I'm going to have a good time, and I want to dance with my wife on the side of the road. That happened multiple times. So there's, those type of memories. I couldn't just narrow it down to one, but I could come with a bunch of those that he just found ways to enjoy life. And doesn't mean he wasn't happy every moment of his life, you know what I mean? Yeah. But those happy moments he really cherished, and he made sure that those were passed on.
I love that, man.
Kind of fun.
Have you already had his funeral, his service?
Yeah, we had the funeral 3 weeks ago, and the graveside service, this one too, the graveside service go along with Canadian Brass. He didn't want people to be sad at his funeral. He didn't want to have this drawn out thing. So he had a Canadian Brass song that's kind of slow up front, and then it turns into this ragtime, like swing type thing. And he goes, I want people dancing at my funeral.
Nice.
So at the graveside service, we played Canadian Brass, and I got my mom, and we were dancing at the, after we said all the sad stuff, we were dancing to this ragtime, upbeat, super happy song. And then we went back to the facility, and we had pizza and root beer.
Nice.
That's what he wanted. He goes,
that's exactly what he wanted.
Solid. Yeah.
So is Canadian Brass a band? Is it a song? Like, what is it? Because I'm not going to Google this when I get off of it.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, send it to me.
There's no word. It's just a band. Yeah, it's like a little band.
Okay.
Yeah. But just like a trombone, trumpet, like French horn type of stuff. And
that's very cool. So how old was your dad when he passed?
75.
75.
Yep. And really, I mean, it was 8 years, 10 years, so 65, 67 is when, I feel like from about 69 is kind of when we kind of lost my dad.
Yeah. I said this in a text to you, obviously, when you posted the news on social, and, I think of you as a really dear friend. I love and adore you from day one since we met 18 months ago. And when you posted the news, I sent you a text with our family condolences to yours. But Brandon, I think I know this, your dad, from everything that you've told me, he would be was incredibly freaking proud of who you are.
I appreciate that.
Because I'm incredibly proud of who you are from the very little amount that I know you, but to see what you've done and what you've accomplished and what you've overcome and the challenges that you've had and the conversations in depth that we had with worries and fears and what's next. And I think you're an incredible human being. I think the way that you go about life, the way that you are motivated and disciplined, and the way you raise your family and the questions you ask and all of those things that make you who you are, I can only ensure that you got from your dad and your mom. And I think there's a big part of your dad that lives on in you. From what you've told me to what I know about you, I think there is a very close mirror there. And I'm sure he's incredibly proud of you and will continue to be. I think you're a great guy, and I think that he is probably half the man that you will turn out to be in your life. I think you will take what your dad gave you as a lesson, and you will amplify it, and you will leave this world in a much better place, and it will be 10x of what your dad would have done in his lifetime.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Like there's there's things in my life that I'm not that great at, but I do have confidence that I'm a good husband and a good father. And I do believe that. Mm-hmm. A big part of that's from my mom and my dad, for sure.
Yeah.
And the closing line in my funeral talk was, I still hope to be like my dad when I grow up.
I love that.
And I'm grateful for that. And I know not everybody has that father figure. Mm-hmm. And it breaks my heart that people don't get to have that person. They can be there to love them and support them. So, my challenge to all of us would be, seek out those people that don't have that father figure. And we can be that father figure for others too, outside of our family. It won't be the same relationship, but there's people out there that need us. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I love about We Are the Day, because you have 50 plus men in our group, and all of us are striving to become better fathers. Mm-hmm. And I think that not only extends with our direct family, but it needs to extend to those families around us as well.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you letting me come on here. And
absolutely, mate.
Talk a little. And
yeah, absolutely. I think it's a beautiful thing, and I could just tell from your post the passion and the love that you had from your dad. And I was like, this is just a really great time to celebrate him and to talk to you. And obviously you got 4 boys and so that's a whole freaking world too. We didn't really get down that road. We'll have to do another episode about raising boys. I should bring you on, and I should bring Chad Bennett on. You raising 4 boys, him raising 4 girls. Yeah. Maybe we can even marry him off during the podcast and just be done. Yeah. Just be done.
And Chad's crushing. His kids are awesome.
We'll do some arranged marriage type stuff. I can get into the Mormon culture. Let's do this. But no, But no, thank you for coming on, and thank you for being real and raw. And I know it's painful because it's only been a month or so, but I love you, dude, and I know he's looking down on you, and he loves you with all of his heart, and he's watching to see what you do next because he's got some beautiful expectations for you.
Yeah,
he's got some beautiful expectations for you.
I've been feeling that. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate you saying that, dude. I appreciate you reaching out and your love and concern with us.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, I love you, dude, and to Craig, keep an eye on him, all right? Keep him in check.
Keep calling me out, Pops.
Keep calling him out, all right? And keep singing.
Yeah, that's
all
cool.
right. I love you, dude. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bear Den podcast. Please click subscribe and get the updates for our new episodes. And if you feel the need to reach out, you can reach me on Instagram @TheBritBear.